something is wrong. Not catastrophically. Just enough that a single conversation with the right person would probably sort it out. Just enough that asking someone who has done this before would save you days of figuring it out alone. Just enough that reaching out would be the obviously sensible thing to do. And you do not reach out. You spend 3 days working through it yourself. You research at midnight. You try approaches that do not work, and then try variations of those approaches. You get further from the solution before you get closer to it. And eventually you either figure it out alone or you quietly abandon it. But either way, you never asked. And the strange part is that you would help immediately if the situation were reversed. Without hesitation. Without keeping score. You would consider it genuinely no trouble at all. But asking for yourself is a completely different thing. And somewhere underneath the logic you use to explain it, I do not want to bother anyone, I can handle it, it is not that important. There is something older and less rational driving it. Something that was built long before the current situation gave you a reason to reach for it. Psychologists studying help-seeking behavior have identified a consistent and somewhat counterintuitive finding. The people least likely to ask for help are often not the people with the fewest resources or the least capable social networks. They are frequently the most capable, the most resourceful, the most reliably present for everyone around them. The inability to ask is not correlated with need. It is correlated with something else entirely. Attachment research offers the most coherent explanation. People who develop what researchers call avoidant attachment, a pattern that typically forms in early environments where emotional needs were consistently unmet, dismissed, or responded to with frustration, learn a very specific lesson about the relationship between need and outcome. Needing something and expressing that need does not reliably produce the thing you need. Sometimes it produces irritation. Sometimes it produces a response that is worse than no response at all. And the child in that environment, who cannot leave and cannot stop needing, does the only adaptive thing available. They learn to need less. Or more precisely, they learn to appear to need less, to handle things internally, to become self-sufficient not as an achievement, but as a survival strategy. And that strategy, built in childhood for an environment that required it, gets carried into adulthood where it no longer fits, but no longer feels optional either. There is a belief running underneath chronic self-sufficiency that is rarely examined directly because it operates below the level of conscious thought. The belief is not "I prefer to do things alone." It is something closer to, if I need something from you, I become a burden. If I show you that I am struggling, something will shift in how you see me. The image you have of me, which is currently someone who manages, will be replaced by something smaller. And I cannot afford that replacement. This is not paranoia. For a lot of people who carry it, it was once accurate. The self-image they built, competent, capable, not requiring anything from anyone, was functional in an environment where the alternative was genuinely costly, where showing need had real consequences, where the people around them were either unavailable, unreliable, or responded to vulnerability in ways that made vulnerability dangerous. The armor got built because it was needed. The problem is that armor, once built and worn long enough, stops feeling like armor. It starts feeling like skin. There is a particular exhaustion that comes with this that people who carry it rarely name out loud, because naming it would itself be a kind of asking. The exhaustion of being the person who always manages, of every difficulty being processed alone, every problem being solved internally, every hard period being navigated without letting it show in a way that would require someone else to respond to it, of maintaining, always, the appearance of someone who is fine, who has it handled, who does not need anything from the room. That maintenance is invisible to everyone around you, which is the point. But it costs something real. And over time the cost accumulates in ways that are difficult to trace back to their source, because the source is not any single difficulty. It is the continuous, unrelenting work of never letting the guard down. There's also something worth understanding about what asking for help actually requires. why it feels so much larger than it logically should. Asking for help requires, at minimum, 3 things that are each genuinely difficult for people with this history. It requires acknowledging to yourself that you cannot fully handle something alone. For someone whose identity is built around self-sufficiency, that acknowledgement is not neutral. It carries weight. It requires making your need visible to another person, choosing to be seen in a moment of difficulty rather than only in moments of competence. And it requires tolerating uncertainty about how that person will respond, whether they will come through, whether asking will cost something in the relationship or in how you are perceived. For most people, those 3 things are uncomfortable but manageable. For someone whose early experience taught them that needs are burdens and vulnerability is risk, each of those 3 things activates something that feels much older and much larger than the current situation warrants. There is an irony at the center of this that is worth sitting with. The people who never ask for help are often people who are extraordinarily good at giving it, who drop everything when someone needs something, who anticipate needs before they are expressed, who find genuine satisfaction in being useful to the people around them. And on the surface, this looks like generosity. It often is generosity, but it is also sometimes a way of staying on the right side of the equation, of being the person who gives rather than the person who needs. Because being the person who gives feels safe in a way that being the person who needs does not. The dynamic also serves a secondary function. If I am always the one helping, I build relational credit that I never intend to spend. The credit is not the point. The point is that I never have to be in a position of drawing on it. What changes this is not a decision to ask for help more, not a resolution or a reframing or a reminder that people like helping. What changes, it is the gradual, specific, hard-won accumulation of experiences where asking produced something other than what the old model predicted, where the need was expressed and the person stayed, where the vulnerability did not cost what it was always supposed to cost, where being seen in difficulty did not reduce you in the other person's eyes, but occasionally brought them closer. Those experiences do not erase the history, but they complicate it. They introduce evidence that the model built in one environment does not apply universally in every environment that followed. And over enough time, with enough evidence, the armor does not disappear. It just becomes something you are wearing rather than something you are. That distinction is small, and it is everything.